I mean, we are in a terrible, terrible mess there. But if people have been long settled here, which is what he's talking about, but still have a foreign, dual passport or foreign nationality, if they've been paying taxes, then why should they've excluded from the benefits? It just feels, let's go for something more Swedish, like, you've got to learn the language, you've got to work, and if you're an actual criminal, you've got to be deported. I mean, these sort of simple things. Instead, you get a sort of wild-ranging thing that he knows he won't be called on to cost or to do, and it's just irritating.
I'm Hugo Rifkind, and now we're going to be unpacking the politics of the day, from reform's welfare plans to Kemi Badenoch's reach to the right to the phenomenon we've called American berserk. And today, they don't get much more berserk than this. I'm joined by Times columnist Libby Purves. Hello, Libby.
Hello.
How are you?
Berserk,
as I hoped. And
obviously.
Also by the historian and author of Ghost of the Iron Mountain, Phil Tinline. Hello, Phil.
Hi, how are you?
Phil is actually, of course, wearing a bear skin and nothing else, and holding a spear.
Some horns.
Sorry, I thought they were your own horns. I didn't realise you were wearing them.
No.
Thank you both for being with me. We've got a lot to cover, so let's crack on. Let's start with Reform UK. They are unveiling today some radical plans to cut the welfare bill. They say overall it will save £50 billion, which is a lot of money by anyone's standards, but how will they do it? Well, foreign nationals would be excluded from most benefits, including housing benefit, pension credit, child benefit and disability benefits. This would include EU nationals with settled status in the United Kingdom. They would also, in the United Kingdom, they would also replace the disability benefits system altogether. The party estimates 2.89 million people would have their personal independence payments removed or modified. Here is Reform UK's economic spokesperson, Robert Jenrick.
55 billion to foreigners in the last 4 years alone. Just imagine what that money could have done to make the lives of British people better. Like lowering their taxes, investing in hospitals and schools, filling the potholes in the roads. The British taxpayer is acting as the welfare state for the world. That's unfair. We all know it.
Well, this is easily the most radical proposal for reforming the welfare system in a generation. The Tories have called it cobbled together. Labour says it's fantasy economics. Reform says it's a reasonable principle that the country you're a citizen of should pay for your welfare. Libby, what do you think?
A great deal of not very much respect there, really. I mean, if Jenrick really wants another 5 years of negotiating with the EU over this, which is what it would involve, he's welcome. But I mean, they flipped and they flopped over the two-child benefit, and I mean, of course, there's a case for less support for immediate asylum seekers. I mean, we are in a terrible, terrible mess there. But if people have been long settled here, which is what he's talking about, but still have a foreign, dual passport or foreign nationality, if they've been paying taxes, then why should they've excluded from the benefits? It just feels, let's go for something more Swedish, like, you've got to learn the language, you've got to work, and if you're an actual criminal, you've got to be deported. I mean, these sort of simple things. Instead, you get a sort of wild-ranging thing that he knows he won't be called on to cost or to do, and it's just irritating.
It sort of seems to me like what they want to tilt at here is the idea of foreigners coming here and claiming benefits. They step off the boat and the next moment they're getting a huge check. But the problem they have there is that really doesn't account for very many people or very much money. So they've had to extend it out to people who have settled status, to EU nationals with settled status, and then it starts to have a real impact on fairness.
Yeah, it seems deeply un-British on that basis. I mean, it's starting with the story you want to tell and then sort of scrambling backwards frantically to try and make the maths work. I mean, one of the things that's striking about it, of course, as the Times reporting on it points out, is that, they've acknowledged themselves that if they do this, not only, as Libby says, we're going to end up with years more fun Brexit negotiation or renegotiation, but, Britons living in the EU will similarly lose their rights and, may want to come back. They've estimated a cost of half a billion for expats returning to the UK and claiming welfare. But it does rather strike me that figure is notably low and the other one is notably high. I'm not sure that there's a 100-to-1 ratio there.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I mean, Libby, the renegotiation of the Brexit deal, to have to do that all over again just for this, I don't know. I don't think anyone's going to rejoice at that.
No, I don't think so. I just think we have to. The whole welfare system does need overhauling, but this is such a simple overhaul. It just sounds great. We are not a welfare state for the world, and indeed we're not. I mean, there's a lot behind that sentiment that we cannot just go on assuming that we must give everything all the time to anybody who comes and asks for it, however they've come here, however illegally, even if they're criminal. And I think, but it's a simplistic thing, and it's, as I say, I hate to keep on just being dismissive about reform, because yes, they might get more seats, but irritating is the main thing that they are. They don't really add to the argument. They just put out these huge blowhard policy ideas, and it gets none of us anywhere. There's no thinking in it. The Conservatives are at least thinking it through a bit.
There are political problems as well with this policy, Phil, because they wish to dramatically reduce personal independence payments and the number of people getting them. And they're not the only people who wish to do this. I think pretty much every party wishes to do this in some shape or form. Right. But a huge number of Reform voters are in receipt of personal independence payments. And a lot of the constituencies that Reform represents and hopes to represent have a huge number of people on their benefits who are basically, the fact that they're on these benefits are the signs of their life struggling in precisely the way that makes them want to vote for Reform in the first place.
Well, exactly. I mean, the Reform's great problem, which is a legacy of the Leave vote in a lot of ways, is it's a cobbled together of two almost opposed constituencies, a sort of what you might caricature as a sort of red-trousered Buckinghamshire stockbroker and somebody who lost their job in industry in Sunderland in the 1980s and has never really recovered. In many respects, these people don't have much in common, but they have been encouraged to blame the same people for certain things. So no, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense. I mean, it is striking watching Jenrick standing at a podium marked ending Benefits Britain. I mean, one of the benefits that he's presumably not going to abolish, he's certainly not going to abolish, is the state pension, which is rather important to Reform voters as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, Libby, look, Reform may be doing this badly, in an ungainly fashion, in a way that doesn't work and in a way that is counterproductive even for themselves and their electoral prospects. Nonetheless, there is sort of broad consensus across the political system that our welfare system is too expensive and we need to do something about it. And if not this, then what?
Well, we have a brand new Prime Minister who has got a very good opportunity to do some things very, very quickly, which go a little bit beyond putting out sort of mad telephone alerts and banning portable barbecues. And I would have liked to see something really big and immediate about that, as I would about defence spending, and as I would about things like the water problem, the national water problem. But we're not getting it at the moment. It's annoying because we had too long of not very much happening under Labour, and now we have Andy Burnham who said stuff would happen, and it's not happening. And in fact, he's got quite a good opportunity because he hasn't even got Parliament sitting at the moment, so he could make some very big announcements and sort of dare them to come back and argue about it.
Well, look, stick with us. Up next, we're going to be talking about water. We're also going to be talking about everything from berserk people to pubs to emergency alerts to Penny Mordaunt. That's when we come back with a little bit more. But first, let's get the latest news with Andy Hayes. Hello, this is Hugo Rifkind, currently unpacking the politics of the day with Libby Purves and Phil Tinline. Let's talk about water. Ministers were told to brace themselves for widespread bans on water use at car washes and in private swimming pools during secret talks about how to combat the ongoing drought. And Whitehall officials have drawn up a reasonable worst-case scenario that would include restrictions on businesses if the low levels of rainfall continue. Phil, this does seem a bit weird because there's droughts in one part of the country and not in other parts of the country, and you'd think we can invent some sort of thing to move water around, such as pipes.
Well, you would indeed. I mean, what strikes me most about this is the reasonable worst-case scenario bit of it, because we have throughout our history confronted reasonable worst-case scenarios, which often obviously don't happen, but do shape what we think we can do. And that's kind of where I come at this from. I mean, I've read a whole book about it. So, and things like Operation Yellowhammer and all sorts of fears of coups in the 1970s. And there's an extraordinary document I remember finding in the Department of the Environment papers in 1974 when there was a possibility of strikes, which might have killed the sewage system for a bit and damaged the sewage system such that you wouldn't have been able to leave old people or babies in basements because the basements were at risk of being flooded by sewage. Now, obviously, that's not actually going to happen. But as with this, that the fears of what might be about to happen shape where we think we can go.
Yeah, but I mean, this does sound like it might be about to happen.
I mean, no? This is more likely than some of it. Yeah, this is more likely than military coups, for sure.
Libby, did you know that you lived in a country at risk of droughts?
I I can see it. I am looking at it, actually. If I could turn this sideways, you would see it on the screen that we're looking at. But no, of course, and I mean, I'm very close to wildfires. I mean, we were sort of a few miles from the wildfires and took people in the other night at Dunwich Heath. Yes, of course, we have a situation of drought. The idea of these bans are quite interesting. Car washers, absolutely, yes. There is nothing wrong with a bucket and cloth. There's actually nothing wrong with a dirty car. I have one of the dirtiest cars in Suffolk. I give the odd wipe for bird droppings. That has to happen. Otherwise, don't care. Car washers are ridiculously wasteful. I'm interested in what they say about private swimming pools, because anyone who's ever had one knows that actually you hardly ever have to top it up. You know, it's very, very rare. It's massively and constantly filtered, you know, and therefore probably means fewer cool down showers. I think, you know, we should all be much more careful about using water than we are. We've been sort of spoilt by a rainy climate. We should have more reservoirs. We should also have those pipes down from Scotland where it's really soggy, and you know, feed the Midlands and the South. We don't do it. We do HS2 instead, which is fairly useless and overcosts. We need some good thinking about all this sort of stuff, and extra reservoirs as well. So yeah, I do. I appreciate the idea of drought. I know about it. I was around in '76, you know, when there were standpipes in the streets.
Look, it's wonderful to have somebody on the show sticking up for the beleaguered and reduced constituency of private swimming pool owners. That's for Deeply Times Radio, so thank you, Libby, for that. Let's move on. Several ex-Tory MPs, including the ex-Cabinet Minister Dame Penny Mordaunt, are facing a weeks-long delay to find out if they can re-stand for the party at the next election. She and several other ex-MPs were told to expect a decision by the end of June, but they haven't had one, and they've been waiting weeks for an update on their future. Libby, Kemi Badenoch is very much saying the Conservatives are the party of the right. Should we look at this and think these are all people who she's just not sure she wants anymore?
I don't really know what's happening here. It seems a bit odd. I'd always thought of Kemi as not actually extreme right, but actually fairly centrist and humane. I'm not sure why some of these people like Penny Mordaunt are left out, you know, have experience. I think her support of Bonehill Payne seemed to me also quite reasonable. This is somebody who served a sentence 10 years ago and might still have something quite useful to say about the nature of radicalisation. But all I can say, I'm no expert on this, but I have had a friend through the Conservative Association local candidate selection process, and it all seems to me far from totally straight. And really rather appalling. So that's anecdotal, though.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
By the way, can I just say that a small private swimming pool can cost a great deal less than most people in London spend?
By all means, yes. How many do you have, Libby?
No, I have had them. We have a very small exercise pool at the moment, but as I say, we never have to top it up. Very, very rarely. Normally, the bit of rain does it, and it's been no problem all summer. So, I think that's one of those things which just sounds like a political thing about swimming pools. I'm far more exercised about the ridiculousness of people washing the cars all the time.
Well, look, it's fitting that we went back to swimming pools because we are talking about Tory wets. Phil, Lisa texted into the station earlier.
Struggling, Hugo, struggling.
It's the wind beneath my wings. It's what I live for. Crap puns. Lisa texted into the station earlier. She said, I think Kemi should think carefully in pursuit of reform converts. She risks completely losing a much larger group of voters, small c Conservatives like me, who are feeling politically homeless and really turned off by recent statements such as the support of Mr. Bonehill Payne. This was, of course, the ex-Nazi, neo-Nazi, I suppose, who was embraced by the party and then sort of rejected again last week. And she continues, is the centre ground of politics over? Phil, what do you think about this? It's very hard to see what the Conservatives are doing, because the kind of MPs, people like Penny Mordaunt, who they seem to be unkeen on re-embracing, they are a popular constituency, if just not among Conservatives.
I think what's happening here is a fairly fundamental shift in how parties think about themselves and think about their fellow members, because the way that parties used to work, I mean, you mentioned the Wets, right? When Thatcher chucked the Wets out of the cabinet, she didn't expel them from the party, she didn't ban them from standing all the way through Thatcher's period. Even at her toughest, even when Norman Tebbit was the face of that government, Julian Critchley was still there, you know. And so the idea that a party should be this big, baggy, flobby thing which has its sort of centrists and has its radicals is actually a democratic device that's really, really useful, because it means that when politics enters a crisis, the radicals are there within the tent and you can lean that way, as indeed happened with Thatcher, and then when things calm down you can lean back to Major and Cameron and so on. Same with Labour. I mean, you know, Blair did not expel Corbyn. It was Starmer who expelled Corbyn. And this move to this narrow factionalism is, I think, what leads to this sort of, we must purge the people who are not of our faction because somehow they've decided they won't work together. I probably would blame social media of making us all into kind of hyper-individualists for this, but that's another topic.
But it does seem to be, I mean, it is increasingly hard, Phil, to make the argument to Conservatives that if you are so worried about reform on your right, the way you fight them is not by being them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, you do want, I mean, Stephen Bush has been talking about this for months, you know, in the Financial Times and on Blue Sky. You know, you do actually need to kind of keep the people you assumed would stay with you, because that is absolutely no longer an assumption you can make. I mean, British politics is not the same as America. It's not polarised. It's actually become sort of fragmented and atomised to the point where people will change party election by election by election. There's no safe seats anymore, really. You've got to keep the people who you assume you were always going to have.
Look, some further defence of swimming pools has come in. Ms. AG writes in and says, in my area of rural Hampshire, several neighbours have swimming pools. During a recent water outage, thank you Southern Water, we were very grateful for their offer for us to get buckets of pool water to flush our loos. Meanwhile, Chris says all new build homes should now come with water butts to store water to help the current issue in future, and solar panels as mandatory. Thank you, Chris. Solar panels, of course, very useful for heating a swimming pool.
Can I say one more thing about Kemi, just moving back from swimming pools again? I love the way we're moving to and fro. It's good. But I wish that Kemi Badenoch would think about trying to lure back one or two of the better ones who went to reform. I'd love to see Danny Kruger back. I would.
Do you think she can do both of those things at once? Can she lure back somebody like Danny Kruger? And I know you're a big Danny Kruger fan. You've talked about him often. You make a very good case for him. But do you think she can lure back somebody like Danny Kruger while also trying to re-embrace people like Penny Mordaunt?
I don't see why not. You just have to have some very big, honest conversations with them all. I just think. I mean, what Phil was just saying just now is absolutely right. We don't want this sort of great, big, solid lump of a party. You know, we need sort of baggy ones which kind of fit and adjust themselves around life and change. And I think I don't see why there shouldn't be a lot of very different people inside the same party.
The only two people I can think of who changed party twice historically, though I'm sure there are others, are Winston Churchill and Oswald Mosley. So I guess we could go one of two ways.
Oswald Mosley, what did he do? He went from Labour to fascist. He didn't go back again.
He was Conservative, then Labour, and then he went then New Party, and then the Dark.
And Churchill was
a Conservative, then a Liberal, then a Conservative.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, let's move on. We had A-level results last week. It's GCSEs this week. Libby, you've been writing in the Times today about education, and particularly how learning should be lifelong. Tell us your argument.
Very simple message, not even an argument. It's just to those who are now reeling after GCSE or A-level and deciding what to do and wondering if their university was the right place or wasn't the right place. Just to say, it's not the end. It is not the end of education at 16, 18, 21, whenever. There are still new directions, there's still new stuff to learn, new paths to take, examples of various people who've done that. Life is longer today than it has ever been in the West. And any sense of completeness or final direction, and I did this, so I'm stuck with this, it's illusory. You can move on, you can carry on. I just wanted to say good luck, everybody. Carry on, keep on learning all your life. It's the only way.
Yeah, I mean, Phil, so, I mean, with one of my kids is doing A-levels at the moment, and the stuff that she's learning, I'm just sort of so jealous. I mean, she's talking about going off to university. I think how wonderful it would be to spend 3 years learning stuff. And then I think back to, when I was that age and how just I wasted it all, had no interest and was much more interested in booze and cigarettes.
I'm writing about spare time people here. You can still do an open university degree in the evenings, Hugo. You can.
Phil, will you teach me?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we will start with the 1931 financial crisis. We should always start. No, I mean, I have one daughter at university, one daughter going through A-levels too. And yeah, I mean, at one level it is fantastic to watch. The amount of pressure on them, though, which I think is sort of the frame for what Libby's writing about, the amount of, I mean, the number of people you see on LinkedIn who are, first, second year students, I remember talking to a friend who went on to work for, the Treasury, the Bank of England and the Chancellor, who said when he was at university, everyone was just sort of flobbing about, and now people were coming to his seminars dressed like they were coming to a business meeting. It's like, there is an interzone where you can be like both a teenager and sort of an adult. You don't have to kind of go straight into professional behaviour the minute you arrive at university.
You would hope. Phil, you've been writing as well about 250 years of what you call the American berserk. Tell us about the American berserk.
Well, I can't take any credit for this phrase. This is Philip Roth, right? Philip Roth wrote this fantastic novel called American Pastoral about the turn to the far left among some young Americans in response to the kind of agonies and horrors of the Vietnam War. And what I use that to do is think about the 250th anniversary of the Declaration, because there's this weird thing about America, right? I mean, quite a few weird things, but this is a country founded on really lofty ideals, as it constantly reminds us, especially this summer. And yet it is an astonishingly violent, angry place that's constantly trying to shatter limits with this kind of rage. So I was trying to make sense of that. And I think Philip Roth's sort of duality in American Pastoral is a brilliant way to think about it. This girl grows up in rural New Jersey in this version of Thomas Jefferson's sort of ideal America, the yeoman farmer, effectively. And she turns into a terrorist. She blows up the local post office and kills a doctor. And Roth has this fantastic line about how she's tipped into the indigenous American berserk and cracked open the utopia that her father had tried to build. And so what I'm trying to think about is why that is. What are the things about the way that America was constituted 250 years ago and has continued thereafter that lead to that? And one of them is, actually, if you read the Declaration, after the nice, hopeful first sentence, most of it is kind of tantamount to conspiracy theory about how George III is trying to impose absolute tyranny on the colonists. And that was necessary as a justification for making this great rupture. But it's also full of fears of enslavement by George III. And of slave rebellion. There was a bit taken out that Jefferson wrote about slavery. And so this sense that you might have your status ripped off you is there right from the founding and goes on from there. You can see it in the way that white Americans have treated black people, you can see it in the way they treated Native Americans, you can see it in the Civil War and so on. This sort of sense that two sides are constantly kind of terrified of the other taking their power away was a way of just trying to think about why America has this sort of strange paradox.
Well, look, I'm fascinating as that is, I do want to move on because we do have some gavels to bang because it is time to open the court. Yes, it is time for Judge Libby, where Judge Libby Purves, ably assisted by Phil, who is not yet a judge, I think is merely a clerk at this stage, although, promotion opportunities are available, will give their verdicts on some of the key dilemmas of the day. I want to start, Libby, with the emergency alert that gave everybody a frightful shock on Friday. Was it correct for the government to set out an emergency alert telling people not to use barbecues?
Well, it kept everyone very entertained, didn't it? With everybody's sort of evenings being completely ruined by sudden mad loud noises from everybody's phones. No, I think it probably was a bit over the top. I gather Angela Rayner signed it off, and over the top is, I think, what she does best. No, I think it's not quite the same as saying there is an invasion or whatever. But I suppose people did need telling. Some people did need telling. Some people are still having campfires, all that. They've now managed to ban fireworks. But on the whole, I don't have any strong feelings either way. A lot of people think it was a nonsensical thing to do, but I think fine, as long as they don't keep on doing it every time they want to adjust our behaviour in some small way. That would be terrible.
Phil, what I like about this story is if it's possible to have an emergency non-barbecue, then by definition it's possible to also have an emergency barbecue. And I like the idea of an emergency barbecue. So you make a phone call saying whether it's police, fire, ambulance, or no, I need a barbecue right now.
It's like the emergency podcast that people do every time there's a news story. No, I mean, look, obviously it was verging on the over the top as a one-off intervention. Fine. I think it drew attention to a genuine problem, and people do have a habit of doing really dumb things at times like this, and it can blow up very quickly. So as you can see a justification for it. Not totally sure about the kind of the blaring alert. I think there was a way of doing it which didn't have to happen at that very moment and could have been possibly slightly dangerous. But as Libby says, so long as we don't keep doing it every 5 minutes.
Libby, sorry.
I was thinking it was sort of, it showed us up very much as the opposite of all that wonderful stuff that Phil's been writing about the berserkers, which I absolutely get that. Americans are always terrified of suddenly being tyrannised on or suddenly not being head of the world themselves. And so we're the exact opposite. We get this sort of terrific sort of berserk phone alert and everybody laughs at it, or because it was completely unnecessary. I'm not sure it's ever going to work if there ever is a real crisis or war, because I think that the British thing will be to say, what do you mean?
Sinking giggling into the sea, as someone said.
Sinking giggling into the sea. Look, I'm afraid that is all we have time for, which is a terrible shame, because the next thing I was going to ask you about was pigeon contraception, and I'm still not quite sure how one puts a prophylactic on a pigeon, but I'm not sure I want to know. Phil Tinline, thank you very much indeed. Wonderful to have you with us. Libby Purves, always an absolute pleasure. This is Hugo Rifkind here on Times Radio.